Welcome to the Mindset Gym podcast, where we exercise your way of thinking to help unlock your hidden potential. I'm your host, Emily Irwin, a registered nurse and holistic nutritionist with a passion for all things health, fitness, and personal development. All right, let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to the Mindset Gym podcast. I hope you are having an amazing start to your week. So we're going to kick things off today by talking about habits, why they matter, how to build them, and how to sustain them over the long term. So if we think of our lives as a city, every day of our lives is a building in that city. Our habits are those bricks that make up those buildings. They create the foundation for how our lives play out day to day and pave the way for what we're able to accomplish. Many of us have habits that we've either developed intentionally or ones that have come about without us giving it a whole lot of thought. Habits can be productive and beneficial, like making your bed every day, or drinking enough water, or taking a multivitamin, or they can be really harmful. One thing people tend to struggle with the most is how to change your habits. Breaking out of patterns that you have spent years or months solidifying and ingraining into your routine. It can feel really impossible to break out of those routines when we have spent so long becoming accustomed to them. Our brains thrive on consistency and repetition because it eliminates the work of decision making. We're able to establish a habit as a consistent part of our routine, and our brain will ingrain it into our system and essentially run it on autopilot. The reason it feels so difficult to break out of this routine is because it takes more mental energy to create a new pattern, and our brains are designed to take the easier route. When we have ingrained a pattern into our routine and our brain has learned to just run it on autopilot, that's very easy. That's the easy way for it to just continuously repeat these tasks and not worry about decision making, worrying about changing things. Everything's the same, everything's easy, status quo. Your brain loves that. One positive to this is the fact that you can leverage it to make a new habit stick. The more you do a habit, the more your brain will see it as a repetitive staple in your day, and it will make an effort to ingrain it into your routine and automate it. So when you start doing a new habit, it will feel really difficult and really hard to ingrain into your routine initially. But the more that you do it, the easier it will become. It'll become a much more natural part of your day and you won't have to think about it so much. One of the biggest mistakes that we make when trying to make new habits is doing too much all at once. When we're feeling really motivated, it can be easy to think that you're just going to wake up in the morning and overhaul your whole life. And we see things like this a lot on, things like January 1st or the start of a new week. People want to take their entire routine and throw it out the window and start a ton of new things. The problem is that it doesn't really work that way. Once the motivation wears off and your real life creeps back in, let's say you had a stressful day at work or you didn't sleep really well the night before, your brain is going to want to lighten your load by defaulting to the most familiar thing. And if you have taken on way too much change at once, when you were feeling really motivated and really willing to do so, it can feel like way too much to keep up with all of that change. And so instead of keeping any of it into your routine when things get really hard, your brain will push you to kind of throw everything out the window and default back to what your old patterns were. When it comes to building habits that stick, the best strategy is to start small. Instead of changing a million different things at once, pick one small thing that you can implement into your day. Maybe it's getting up 30 minutes earlier, or drinking an extra glass of water, or reading 10 pages of a book before bed. Whatever you feel that is a really easy shift from your current routine that adds a little bit of positive change. So it doesn't have to be something really drastic and big. It can just be a little tweak to what your current routine is. Now that you've picked that one habit, add it to your routine and keep doing it. The nice thing about starting small with one easy habit is that it's much more accessible to do when you're having those really tough, stressful, unmotivated days. So let's say, for example, your goal is to drink a gallon of water a day and you're not drinking any right now. I hope you're drinking some water, but we're gonna say none for sake of this example. Instead of trying to drink a gallon of water a day right out of the gates and just immediately adding all this fluid into your day when it's not something you're used to, just add one glass. Just start with one glass. So when you're having a really hard day, a really stressful, a really taxing day, when doing something out of your normal routine is going to feel much more challenging than normal, one glass is not a huge hurdle. That's not something that is so overwhelmingly hard to do that you're going to think, F this, quit. So once you have this habit into your routine, keep at it until it gets ingrained and that autopilot kind of kicks in. Eventually your brain will start doing this task consistently enough and it'll help build it into a staple into your day. So you will get to a point where you don't even really have to think about it. This just becomes something that you do automatically. You'll start to notice when you're at that point because your day will almost feel off if you don't do this task anymore. So once you've reached that point, it's time to add something else. So now you can pick either a second small habit, or we can add a little small change onto the thing you've already done. So let's take our water example. If you are drinking 1 glass really consistently and now it's a part of your day and you do it without even thinking and it feels really natural and easy, let's add a second glass in. So now that we have our second habit into our routine, we simply kind of rinse and repeat what we did with the first one. So keep at it with this second change until it becomes ingrained into your routine. And eventually that will happen. You will get to a point where that second habit stacks onto the first and it feels just as natural as your regular routine did before you started. So this is something you can continue to repeat until you've kind of built the routine you want. So again, back to our example, you can keep adding a glass, keeping at that habit until it feels really normal, add another glass, and keep going until eventually you are actually drinking a gallon of water a day, but you did it in this step-by-step gradual way so it doesn't feel like a really overwhelming change. It'll actually feel like a normal part of your day to get up and drink that much water. So the amazing thing about this is that if you keep it up over the long term, eventually your routine will look drastically different from what it once was. So if you are thinking right now that you want to create this really big drastic change, you can't get there. This just makes it much easier to sustain over the long term because you've built it in a really sustainable way. You've eased yourself into it instead of just jumping right into the deep end. And the best part is that because you've done it in such a slow, structured kind of way, it almost feels imperceptible. There's never this point where your routine feels drastically different. It feels like you're having to take on this big challenge. It doesn't feel like you're forcing yourself to take on some foreign routine that doesn't feel like yours. You get to keep your normal routine just with a small tweak, and you've spent all this time kind of slowly easing into what you want your routine to look like. And that's really all there is to it. Don't underestimate the power of those small habits. I think sometimes we can overlook them and think that there isn't a lot of value in them because they are so small, but they really are capable of creating drastic change in your life. And that's all there is to it. It's not as complicated, I think, as people make it out to be. You do not have to overhaul your life in some big, drastic, magical way. Just take those small building blocks and run with it. Keeping up those small changes over the long term has so much value. And if you're still here, thank you so much for sticking around and for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.